Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be going over my Sony A7IV video settings. This is going to be a pretty comprehensive video breaking down literally everything from beginning to end. And so if you're here only for a specific answer or a specific setting, then feel free to look down in the chapters below. Otherwise, if you're here for the whole deal, then sit back and enjoy because this will be a long one. So without further ado, let's hop into it. So as I said, these settings are going to be for video specific. So on your dial, make sure that you are in the video mode and then make sure that you are selected on the M manual tab. Once you've done those things, let's jump into the menu and begin. So the first place we're gonna start is the shooting tab, starting with the image quality. So I go over to file format, and for this particular one, I choose A7IV 4K. That's gonna get you your highest quality of 4K shooting. Down to movie settings, I shoot in 24p and I select it at the 240 megabits at 42210-bit. S&Q settings stands for slow and quick. You can either do slow motion without audio or you can do a time lapse in these settings. For me, I don't need it to do slow motion because I've got some other slow motion modes that we'll get to here shortly. So I use this for time lapse, which to be honest, I've never even used it for a time lapse, but I have it set up for time lapse. So recording frame rate, 24p, frame rate, 1 FPS. And then you can see at the bottom here, that's gonna give us 24 times quick motion or a time lapse. Proxy settings, I just keep everything to off because I'm not shooting proxies on this camera. However, if I were to, I would go ahead, put that on, and then I would just choose something, pretty small like the A7IV HD. That's gonna shoot it in 1280 by 720. APS-C 35 shooting, leave it to auto. Lens compensation, I keep everything shading off, chromatic aberration off. The distortion, it's automatically gets set to auto because I have breathing compensation on. Breathing compensation, if you haven't seen any of the videos, that's just a little thing to where when you manual focus from something that's close to something that's far away or vice versa, your lens will not do that breathing thing where it'll literally like crop in the frame a little bit. Moving down to media, the first option you have is format, which literally means to format your SD card. Record media settings, I just have everything selected to slot 1 because that is the CF Express Type A slot. The recover image DB and display media info, I keep both of those to slot 1. The display media info, having it on slot 1 just means that when you press your playback menu, it'll be for slot 1. If you want it for slot 2, then you switch it over to slot 2. Moving on to file settings, this is where you can actually customize what the name of your video file is. And so I set the file number to series, and then the file name format, set it to title, and that now allows me to actually change the title if I want to, which I do, and I've just got mine selected to my initials, MFA, and then whatever the title of the clip is. Shooting mode, we're actually gonna skip this for now because we will come back to that later because this is gonna be where we actually set our custom 1, 2, and 3 dials. USB streaming, this is actually a really cool feature because you can actually just connect a USB-C cable to your camera and turn it into a webcam, and I just have mine set to 1080p at 30p. Movie recording, I just have mine disabled, but if you ever did want to record while doing the USB streaming, this is where you would do that. Moving on to the shutter. Silent mode, I've got mine turned off. Release without lens, I've got that disabled. It's kind of confusing because the way it's worded here, classic Sony menus, but this basically, one of the new features on the A7IV is that the shutter for your sensor will close if you take the lens off, which just kind of prevents it from like dirt or dust or anything weird getting on your sensor. You actually want this disabled, which will allow the shutter to close. If you enable it, the shutter will always stay open. I know that's confusing, but that's what that means. And then the anti-flicker, I've got this currently set to off for the variable shutter, which this, again, if you've ever filmed something where you have like really cheap lighting, sometimes you'll see like a flicker happening in those lights. You can get rid of that by choosing your variable shutter to on, but I don't want it on all the time. So this is where you would choose it to go on, but for now, I keep it off. Audio recording, Obviously we want to record audio, so I've got it set to on, audio record level at 10. You can play around with this, especially if you have a microphone attached or not. The audio timing, set it to live instead of lip syncing. The wind noise reduction, I just keep it off. I don't really want any like enhancement happening to the audio, so I will do all of that in post, so I just leave it off. And then the audio level display, I always want to be able to see my audio levels while I'm recording, so I leave that on. Time code, I actually don't do anything for time code with this camera, so we're just gonna skip that. Image stabilization, I haven't done anything fancy to it other than make sure steady shot is set to standard. And the steady shot adjustment, I just keep it on auto, and so far I've found that this works really good. Getting into the digital zoom settings, the zoom range, I believe comes default to optical zoom only, but we wanna make sure we change that to clear image zoom. This will allow us to actually zoom in on our frame 1.5 times without ever seeing any noticeable difference in the quality of the video. And then we have the custom key zoom speed. This literally just means that when you're zooming in, how fast is it gonna zoom in? I just have mine set to 8. All right, shooting display. I have the grid line display set to on, and then the grid line type for the rule of thirds. I just like having that rule of thirds grid while I am shooting. And then the emphasized record display, this is really cool. It just puts a little red box around the outline of your LCD display, which just gives you another indication that you are recording. Marker display, I keep everything here off. Whew, all right, moving on. That was probably gonna be the longest one. The exposure tab, I'm actually going to skip this altogether because we're gonna set our exposure, don't worry, but I don't ever do it within the menu, so we're just gonna skip that tab and then go on to the focus one. This camera has so many dang focus options and menu items that it can be very, very confusing, but I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I keep mine pretty simple for the most part, so let's go through that. Okay, focus mode. Hey, we have this camera because it has amazing autofocus, so let's make sure we have it set to continuous autofocus. This is a big one. This is gonna be your autofocus sensitivity and the transition speed, meaning how sensitive will it be to catching on to a new subject to focus, and then what is that speed going to be to rack from one subject to that next one. So the transition speed, I have mine set to the middle at 4. I believe it comes default at 5, and then the subject shift sensitivity, I want that to be on the highest level at 5. So essentially what I've done here is that our transition of focus is gonna be nice and smooth. Almost, it's going to look like a manual focus pull, but I just wanna make sure that if I go from one thing to the next, that it recognizes that I want to make that change of focus, and so it's going to initiate that very quickly. I don't know if that made sense or not. Hopefully it did. It made sense to me. If you still don't understand, leave me a comment down below. Autofocus assist, leave it off. Focus area, just for the record, I keep mine on wide, but again, I don't set that here in the menus. I have another custom button to do that for me. Face and eye autofocus, I leave face and eye to on. The subject to human, unless obviously I'm like gonna film my dog or whatever, then I'll switch it over to dog. The right versus left eye select, I don't think this matters. I guess the only time it ever would matter is if you're like having your person do some sort of like profile view where only one of their eyes is showing. The face and eye frame display, this just means that whenever you are focused on somebody's face or their eye, a little box is going to hover around it just to show you what it's being focused on. I like that to be on, but if you don't, you can turn it off. And then register face priority, I leave this to on. I should probably read the manual more, but I believe this actually is something where you can like import a picture of your face and then it'll know, like if you're vlogging or whatever and maybe there's multiple people around you, it'll know, hey, focus on your face, the one that you've like uploaded to the database here, which is actually kind of insane. Focus assistant, focus map, I leave that turned off. I don't super like that feature, although that is a new feature within this camera. If you do like it, this is where you would turn it to on, but for me, I leave it off. Focus magnifier, this is super cool because if you are manual focusing or you're even autofocusing for that matter, and you just wanna like punch in a little bit more just to make sure that you are tack sharp, this is where you can start to set some of these settings. Peaking display, I leave mine on. One of the new things with this camera is that no matter what, whether you're in manual focus or autofocus, if you have peaking on, it will be on all the time. So I let my peaking level be high so I can really see what it is, and then the peaking color to be red. Okay, all the playback menus, I've actually left all of this to be default. I don't have any problems with the playback whatsoever, so I have no need to switch anything. Next is the network tab. This is gonna be where you start like connecting your phone or doing like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi settings. Again, for me personally, I don't do anything with the network. I know some people are like, why would you not? You're like totally missing out on things, but I just haven't found a need to use that yet. So I have left everything default for the time being. Now we get to the final tab, which is the setup. This is a very important thing to go over. So please pay attention. And again, ask any questions if you have any. Area/date, just go ahead and set your language, your date, your time, all that stuff. Moving on to number 3, which is the operation customize. This is like my favorite part of the whole camera. So we are going to now customize all of the custom buttons, all of the custom dials, all of the function menus. Like we're gonna do all of that right here. Because we are shooting video, we wanna make sure that we go down one to the video custom key dial set. And here is our first option, which is the rear custom buttons. And it's super cool because the menu actually shows you, has a little like hovering highlight of what button you are customizing. So for number 1, I let this be the face/eye subject select. This button will allow me to choose, do I want human eye focus, dog eye focus, or bird eye focus. Number 2 is going to be my focus magnifier, which we talked about that, right? Zooming in to check on your focus. Custom button number 3 is gonna be my focus area. Custom button number 4, I set this to my white balance. And then number 5, that is going to be my picture profile button. Going on to rear number 2, the first button, which is actually your joystick, is I switch that to my monitor brightness. Number 2, this is just the center button of your main scroll wheel on the back. I actually have mine set to nothing because, to be honest, I've got everything else set to where I need it to be set. And I find myself ever so often actually accidentally pressing that center button. And so I don't want anything to happen when I press that button. Number 3, that is default set to the drive mode. So I just leave it be there. Number 4 is gonna be the ISO. Again, that is the default selection here. And then number 5, which is gonna be the bottom, or 6 o'clock, I have that to my APS-C/Super 35 crop mode. Moving on to rear number 3. So now we are on the red record button. I'm just gonna leave that be to movie shooting because I like that. Custom button number 2, I have that to be our clear image zoom. Going on to the custom lens button, I genuinely don't use this button ever, so I just keep it to not set. And then here, we're gonna get to all of the custom dial wheels, which we actually have 4 in this camera, so that's kind of insane. Number 1 is going to be your AV, which I don't know why they call it this, but that is for our aperture. Number 2 is actually our TV. Again, I don't know why it's called that, but that is going to be our shutter speed. So number 1 is aperture, 2 is shutter speed. Number 3, which is this new dial wheel, which I made an entire video about this. You can go ahead and check that out. I have this set to custom white balance temperature, which again, this is maybe one of my favorite settings on this camera because it allows you to change the temperature of your white balance even while in recording. And then our 4th wheel is actually the entire scroll wheel on the back. I've got that set to ISO. Okay, so that is all of our custom buttons. But because this is a Sony camera, we actually have even more custom options to change. So that's gonna be down here in our FN menu settings. So if we go down to make sure that we're in the movie record function menu, you can see that we now have an additional 12 like quick select options here. Number 1, I've got my audio record level. So this is the quickest and easiest way to actually change how loud the internal mic is picking up. Number 2 is the focus mode select, which I already have another custom button for that, but just in case I choose to use this one, this is where we do that. Here is that variable shutter that we talked about earlier that would get rid of some of that flickering noise. This is the clear image zoom speed. Then we've got our zebra display, our zebra level. We've got our peaking display, peaking level, peaking color, steady shot, IBIS selection. If I do want to use the focus map, I've got a quick select there. And then lastly is the record media settings. If I ever want to change which card I'm recording to, I would do that here. Okay. Are you still here? Are you still with me? I know this has been a lot. So we're almost to the final stretch, or we're in the final stretch. We are almost finished with this video. So we've set everything up the way we want to set it up. Now, lastly, the final thing we need to do is actually select and choose our different custom modes on the top dial, which are modes 1, 2, and 3. Before we do that, I'll just let you know, for me, mode 1 is going to be 422 10-bit 4K 24p. Number 2 is going to be 422 10-bit 4K 60p, and then number 3 is going to be 420 10-bit 1080 120p. It's very easy to make all of these changes, but you want to make sure that you've done everything in the menus up to this point. That way, all we have to do is a few simple changes to set everything up. Make sure, again, that you're still on the M dial. Do not want to be in the 1, 2, or 3. You want to be on the M dial. First thing we're going to change is our shutter speed. Make sure our shutter speed is 1/50th, because again, right, we're shooting in 24p. I personally like to set my aperture as low as the lens can go, which in this case is 2.8. Make sure that our picture profile is in PP8, which is S-Log3. And once it does that, it'll automatically set our ISO to the base ISO of S-Log3, which is 800. And lastly, all we're gonna need to do is go ahead and make sure that we are recording in the right file format. So go back to the shooting tab, go all the way up to the top at image quality, and then go into file format. And then the movie setting is 24p, 240 megabits at 422 10-bit. We go out of that, we go down to number 4 option, which is shooting mode. Then we go into camera set memory. And from right here, we would select number 1. Now, you're gonna repeat this process. So you're gonna change your shutter. If you need to, you're gonna change your aperture, you're gonna change your picture profile. If you wanna do it like I did, we're gonna go back into the image quality. We're gonna go into the movie settings, record frame rate. We're gonna change that to 60p. Again, you would just go back to the shooting mode, camera set memory, and you would change that to number 2 or number 3, whatever you like. Whew, we are done. That is it. That is every setting that I use for shooting video on my Sony A7 IV. If you have any questions at all, any questions whatsoever, I know this is a crazy long video, leave me a comment down below. But otherwise, feel free, check out any one of these videos. YouTube says you might like one of these. And if you want to be a part of this channel, of what we're doing over here, click right here. But till next time, I'll see you guys.